Now we're going to start moving into kettlebell swings. Before we do a kettlebell swing, we're going to do one banded movement to help us get the sense of the swing in our body and get the movement in our body before we start throwing a weight around. As a side note, if you do actually throw the weight, it's just going to fall straight to the ground. Don't worry about that. And I'll tell you, I used to think that it was a joke or just kind of a basic thing that we say that we didn't actually know about, and I lost a kettlebell mid-swing, and it did just drop straight to the floor. So it's true. I promise. Everything's going to be fine. Now, we're going to start with our banded pull-through. You're going to anchor your band at the door. Your band does not have to look like my band. It doesn't have to be a big loop. It can be, but it can also be a band with handles. It can be a band where you're just holding on to two ends. All of those are fine. If you're using one with handles, I would recommend connecting both ends to one handle and then holding the handle in both hands. We're going to straddle the band. I'm going to walk out until I have enough tension on the line that I kind of need to lean forward to keep from feeling like I'm going to fall back. I have my feet a little wider than my hips. From here, much like our deadlift, I'm going to keep my hands just really close to my body. They're going to start straight in front of me. The difference, though, is as I hinge my hips back, my hands are going to go behind me. I'm going to let the band pull me, and I'll get to the point where my back is about parallel with the ground, and then I'm going to squeeze my glutes and bring my hips forward. So just like our hip hinge, just like our deadlift, this is hips back, hips forward. But now the band is trying to pull us backwards, so we also have to keep a little bit more tension moving forward, and we need to start figuring out in our body how we stabilize when something's trying to pull us backwards and we're not necessarily straight up and down at the end. So things to really watch out for with that are that your hands stay nice and close in with your body, that you don't drop your hands down toward the ground, right? It can feel a little awkward at first. That's okay. It'll start feeling a little more normal the more you do it. But we want to make sure that we're staying nice and close to the center of our body. Just like with the deadlifts, it's just in a different direction. So those are our banded pull-throughs. That is going to be the same motion that we use for our kettlebell swings. The difference is that with the banded pull-throughs, the band was pulling us backwards. And with the kettlebell swings, we'll get some pull backwards, but the primary pull is going to be as the bell swings outwards. So for our purposes, we're going to start with our feet hip width apart. You want to give yourself a little bit of extra room just so that you're not worried about hitting your knees or anything like that. It's nice to have a little bit of extra space to work with as you're learning. We're going to do the same hip hinge movement, right? So this will feel like a wide stance deadlift. And then we're just going to let our arms move like a bell, like the bell in a bell tower. So I'm going to hike up, let it swing, come out. So I'm just letting it swing. My arms aren't doing anything here. My hips are what's moving. When I want to stop, I just do that. Finish in my hip hinge, let it come forward. The way that you'll know that if you are trying to use your arms to lift is the bell will come down and point toward the ground. If the bell is swinging forward, the bottom of the bell comes forward, then you know that you're really popping it out with your hips. So it's the force of your hips popping forward that's going to drive it. If you find that you are trying to lift it, two things to try. One is to try going a little bit harder and really squeezing your glutes at the top. Another thing to try, remember that's how we exit, is unhooking your thumbs. You're not really going to be able to lift anything if you're not holding on with your thumbs. So unhook your thumbs and then try the movement again. Just like the banded pull through, it can take a little while to get used to it. Practice and really focus on your hips not lifting. You should feel it here. You can feel it a little bit in your quads, but really focus on the pop of your hips. From there, we can move into a single arm kettlebell swing. For that, we'll do the same thing. We might just turn our hands forward. You can have your hand facing backwards the same way that you would if you were using two hands, or if it's easier for you, you can do a neutral grip. Either are fine. And you will swing. And it's a good idea to make sure that you're moving the other arm alongside of it so that you're holding tension in both sides of the body. To finish, we'll just set it down on the floor. You don't want to try to catch it because then you run the risk of banging your knees. So that's our single arm swing. You can do that on both sides. Then once you feel solid in your single arm swing, you can move into a Darcy swing, which is where you change hands each swing. So for the Darcy swing, we'll pick it up, we'll hike, we'll start with a few just to set up, and then we'll change at the top, change at the top, change at the top, change at the top. So the hands will come together at the top. I'm still popping with my hips, and I'm still swinging the other arm. I'm still exiting by just putting the bell on the ground. So that's our banded pull through and our 3 primary kettlebell swing variations. Your turn.